Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the pulse of the portal. And spring has sprung for Joey McGuire in Texas Tech football. We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more hits. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to see you again. And while we bide our time until tip-off coming up Thursday night, Red Raiders and Wolfpack of NC State, we will have basketball on our minds today, though we will also make a pit stop in the land of springtime football. The flowers are blooming, and so are the storylines for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. We'll get to a couple of those to pay attention to as we get into spring camp this week. But wanted to kick off the conversation, Chris, with something that I guess I would say, unfortunately, or fortunately, or maybe somewhere in the middle, you might not have any feeling whatsoever about it, but it is a part of the basketball conversation this time of year. Typically, we would only be hyper-focused on the NCAA tournament. And if you're in the tournament, you more than likely are not as focused on this aspect, but some very much are. And that is the transfer portal, which I believe opened its window yesterday, that being the 18th. And Chris, I'm curious as to how this will play out. Obviously, for Grant McCasland and the Red Raiders, was a big impact for them last time around as he set out to build his first Texas Tech roster. Will continue to be a big part, obviously, of what they are doing. But I guess it's a bit of a juggling act, again, for those who have basketball, meaningful basketball coming up, because it's not something you can just totally set on the back burner regardless, I guess, of what you're doing coming up this weekend on the hardwood or otherwise. You got to be able to balance these things in this day and age.
Yeah, I think it's what's frustrating to a lot of coaches is that it's like your worlds are colliding. Like it's like everything's happening at the same time. It's like what college football coaches talk about the month of December. Like, wait, hold on. You want us to recruit the high school kid that you're mad at us because we're not signing enough of. We also got to fill our roster up because our administration wants us to win with older guys, and our fans want us to win like right now. And oh, by the way, we have like another game to prepare for. And it's like, you got people on campus, and it's like, being able to compartmentalize is one of the main requirements for being a college coach these days, especially in football and basketball, just because you just have things happening on top of each other, and you must be able to focus. And so for Texas Tech and like the rest of the schools that are playing in the NCAA tournament, yeah, I mean, there's not going to be like the earth isn't going to move as far as movement goes when it comes to portal, okay, because the tournament is still on tap. But as we roll along here, there's going to be things that as teams lose and all those things. But, yeah, you had a lot of movement initially. And, like I think because for the Red Raiders, right now, without wondering or anything, you've got let's just connect some dots here. For a fact, okay, you've got to replace Warren and Joe. Okay, off of your team. So you need a center and you need another primary ball handler, another guard. Okay, so that those are the two guys. But then Drew Steffi, is entered the portal its semester. You've got Kyron Lindsey, who I guess we don't expect back. You've got now Demarion Williams, who wasn't there, and I'm not sure if he's going to go with this team to Pittsburgh or not, and he didn't go through senior day ceremonies, but he's a graduate. I mean, so you're talking like 5 spots right there without really that much of a stretch or kind of a wonder. And then you've got your own, situation with okay, does Lamar want to go get more playing time? Anyway, we can go through that whole exercise, but you know you're going to be bringing in players. And so this is why you hire, and this is why these teams in the staff setups have people like a general manager. They have like a personnel guy. James Blanchard is your football version of that, and Kellen Buffington is that for basketball. Because these guys can like get off to the side and just worry about personnel, and they don't worry about trying to game plan for NC State or whatever it may be. It's like let's identify what we need here. Because like I'm gonna tell you right now, when Brandon Garrison from Oklahoma State jumps in the portal, like I think you're probably very interested, as are probably 300 plus other Division I schools. Because he fits a need that you're going to have, but he's going to fit any roster out there. Everybody can use a young 6'10", previously McDonald's All-American type guy. But this is the part of that you're kind of working through simultaneously as the team is about to get on the plane and go to Pittsburgh later today.
When we get to this tournament dodging conversation we'll have to wrap up our conversation today, I know we'll kind of dive back into how the portal has impacted some of those decisions. But do you think that there's is there any chance of an evolving timeline as far? I know nothing is set in stone seemingly within college sports, but as we've been through this cycle now a couple times around, are we hoping against hope to maybe see a window open at a different time or at a later date, or is there still a chance that maybe that could evolve, I guess?
I don't think anything is set in stone with this stuff. I think it's hard for me to jump ahead to the NIT conversation or the CBI or whatever without really getting into the weeds here, but there's kind of a direct correlation. Like if you want to save those tournaments, you may need to like back up the window on the portal, like at long term. But I go back to, how football is kind of like adjusted it and tweaked it or talking about it and opening up different windows or shortening windows, or because you're trying to do right by everybody. And there's not necessarily a perfect solution. But I just know when you see portal entries, because I think the Red Raiders have already been, Brandon Garrison, Oklahoma State. I think there's a 6'10" kid, I want to say out of Drexel. There's a variety of potential targets, but here's what people need to understand. This is the beginning of the race here. You've got a long way to go before you kind of ultimately put your roster together. And I don't really envision, until you lose, I don't envision you really having a pure or true grasp of what yours is going to look like, or what you want to keep, what you think you'll lose, what you're hoping to keep, whatever, however we want to phrase that. And some of this stuff last year played out into January and July.
I was just thinking the same thing about Coach McCaslin's timeline as they completed a run through the NIT last time around. And I think it's about 30 minutes before tip-off of the opening game when they finally completed the roster. It's like, all right, well, I guess we've got to tip things off here. So let's give them a warm-up uniform. No, that was like an extreme case, but it does show you how far into the process you could go.
And I think you want to have it done, much earlier than that. But you don't know what you don't know. You don't know. Like, do you jump on a bunch of kids that are jumping in the portal initially? They better be no-brainers, because in 3 weeks from now, you may get somebody that jumps in that you would rather have and would love to come here, but it's like, oh, man, I used all my scholarships or NIL or whatever up. We don't have any room. It's total gamble. So your evaluation has to be really, really good initially, because you just don't know. Bob Huggins gets fired, and then you have a spot for Joe Toussaint. But had you been full with a lesser player, you don't have a spot. So there's a lot of dynamics there. I'll also say this too: when you start portal shopping and you start bringing in guys from the portal, like not every one of them are going to be a home run. You will bring in guys because you can't have 13 dudes that expect to play and start. It doesn't work that way, or otherwise your team explodes and it's ugly. You need some developmental type guys. I don't want to say that can't ever help you. I'm saying like guys that are willing to wait their turn or willing to be a rotational piece, not a starter. And so, keep an eye on that when you start seeing Texas Tech mentioned with certain names out there. Is not everybody's going to be like a starter that you bring in. You need depth, you need size, but you also need some guys on the end of the bench, kind of like what Robert and EY were most of the year. And now look at them, you know. But I mean, you need those guys that are good soldiers, going to work hard, and all that, and are willing to accept that role, knowing that, okay, a year from now, okay, my time, here we go.
Are you sure they can't all be home runs? Because I'm pretty sure Grant McCaslin got damn close to a lot of home runs, if not all home runs, then maybe a double or a triple mixed in there, man. The success rate for the guys that they were able to bring in during the first round was amazing, and hope to see something resembling that again.
Yeah, I think I think that you needed immediate impact last year because you lost so much in the transfer cycle or whatever. And so what turns out is a lot of your developmental guys were your young guys on your team last year, like Lamar and Robert, and then you go get EY, and so that's the way that worked out. But I think this year, if you keep your nucleus together, okay, now it can be altered. What I'm saying can be altered if you lose a few of these guys that you really wanted to keep, and then it's like, okay, well, now we got to change our narrative here and kind of what we're looking for. But if you keep your nucleus together, you need to add some primary guys, but all of them won't be, you just, it's because coaches are, honestly, man, as much as coaches are X's and O's and motivational guys, they're psychologists too, trying to keep guys engaged, trying to keep everybody happy. You got people surrounding these kids that are like, dude, you're getting hosed, man. You should be playing 45 minutes a night, dude, in a 40-minute game. That's how much you should be playing. And in fact, you should take all the shots. Like, I don't know why they let anybody else shoot it. This is what people tell these kids.
You should look down on the profession of archaeologist or school teacher.
Yes.
Have no plan B.
I wasn't expecting all that. I don't know what happened there. I don't even remember when you said that. That's
hey, let me just tell you, first and foremost, plan B is good for anybody. Like, the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, had a plan B. His plan B was like make $1 bazillion off shoes and athletic apparel, and then golf and gamble every day of the week. Badass plan B. That sounds like a lot more fun than playing basketball.
Cigars.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah,
but plan B is good for everybody. And let me throw this at you, Chris, because you're right. Not everything is set in stone, including the rundown there on the right side of the screen. Look at how that changes very quickly. So why would someone have two conversations tied together and then break it apart for a football pit stop? I'm going to talk to the idiot that made it that way. And as a matter of fact, I could wet his pants. So I'll just have a talk with myself afterwards. Let's just get into this tournament dodging conversation because it does tie in so tightly to what we're talking about with the portal. You may have seen former, he was an Indiana head coach, Tom Crean, and some others just going off on some of these declining of NIT invitations. Invitational is in the name. You're supposed to be polite. That's very, very rude to not accept an invitation. Now, Chris Beard was one of the first, I guess, most prominent, at least as far as head coaches, not necessarily the basketball program, but head coaches to say thanks, but no thanks. You have seen some others since join that conversation. If I'm not mistaken, Oklahoma also on that list, I believe, but I might be off on that. Anyway, this is not the first time somebody said, nah, we're not doing that. And it's also not just a basketball exclusive thing. I mean, we've seen bowls turned down before and things like that within college football season. So we don't have to confine it to basketball necessarily, but how do you generally feel about a team or program on occasion when offered a postseason opportunity saying thanks, but no thanks for whatever reason? First, this week's March Madness Bracket Highlight brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that's standing out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. And these guys were able to take it to the next level. Today, it's the Red Raider opponent. Coming up Thursday, the NC State Wolfpack, obviously as the Nissan Rogue. They flipped the script and absolutely shocked the nation with a powerhouse run through the ACC tournament and into the big dance. They say, win life, go Rogue. And that's exactly what the Wolfpack did over the weekend. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's episode brought to you by Amazon's Fire TV, your destination for sports, from live games to highlights and beyond. Fire TV offers incredible viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick, which you can just plug, boom, right into your existing television. And you got access to millions of movies and television episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the upcoming college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. And that's not all. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from all of your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV or Alexa devices. And if you haven't done it already, you don't know what you're missing. Trust me on that. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. How do you generally feel about a team or program on occasion when offered a postseason opportunity, saying thanks, but no thanks for whatever reason?
I think that things have changed over the years. I think every case is different. I think that, because the way the portal has changed the sport, okay, there was a lot of teams out there that had a lot of youth on their roster, and you've got a lot of freshmen, or it's like, man, it would be really good for these kids to keep playing. It's a good experience. It's, and you don't have near as much of that out there in the college basketball world these days. Most teams are old. And if they're not old, they're trying to get old by going to the portal and all those things. And there's just not a lot of patience out there. The timing of the portal opening up is just not really conducive to the NIT's success or the CBI success or whatever it may be. And I think the NIT has a place. I mean, heck, man, Grant McCasland would sit here and tell you that it did wonderful things for not only him, his program, and all that, but it's a piece to the puzzle that, it's not the end all be all. They all know that. The 4-letter tournament, I mean, is what is most important and what people care about the most, and what coined the phrase March Madness. NIT to a lot of people stands for not in the tournament. I know there's an extra T in there, but just bear with me, But I think you'll see more and more like either players and or teams just opt out because it's, and imagine you're trying to get an NCAA tournament bid and you're right there on the cusp. And then it's like 48 hours later, you're like, okay, we got to get on a plane and go to Iowa for a game that there may be like 1,500 people at. I mean, it sucks the air out of the room. And like Tyler Perry for Kansas State, because they are going to play in it. Jerome Tang was like, man, I'm going to play the guys that are most excited to play for my team. And if that includes a bunch of younger players, that's what we're going to do. And I don't know, because Tyler Perry famously said 3 weeks ago after one of those games, and he was Grant McCasland's stud last year and helped win the NIT, right? I mean, but he's like, I will not play in the NIT. I will not do it. I mean, I'm just telling you right now. And I don't know if he is kind of reverse course there or if he's opted out, but, so it's a bit of a mess. I think every coach and every team and the way that they're set up is different, and it may be meaningful more for others. But some coaches just say, hey, man, I appreciate the offer, but I need to get busy with the portal and recruiting, or they're going to fire me. Nobody here wants me coaching in an NIT. They want me out there trying to get my roster better, and I need to do some legwork and all those things. So to each his own, but I think the portal window timing and the NIT being what it is, it makes you wonder if they should delay although most people may not even care the NIT. The NCAA does because they're the ones that own it. They own it and operate it now, so they do care.
Do you think that there's anything as far as an adjustment for what's on the line with the NIT that could add anything to it? I mean, I think formerly there was was there a cash prize or something? There's like a payout at one point in time, or I know these become very slippery slopes in the world of intercollegiate student athlete athletics. But what do you think? Are there any ideas out there?
They'll try out new rules and things like that. They tried out some of the technology, that they've used now in the regular season. They kind of try that in the NIT, kind of like the with tech football and stuff and the helmet. in helmet communication during the bowl game and all that stuff. So similar situations there. But ultimately, I think I'll just say this: if you start to expand the NCAA tournament, there is a place for the NIT, but I think it becomes really tricky if you start to expand the NCAA tournament into 72 or 76 teams. ESPN still wants to air content from it. I think there's still enough teams that you could fill up a 32-team bracket on. You're just not going to get a lot of – because, I mean, you imagine if a team's going to turn down an NIT bid and they can't get into the 68-team field. Imagine how, like, the Power 5 type teams are going to feel about not getting into a 72 or a 76 team field.
Right.
Like, damn, we couldn't even get into that. Okay, well, I mean, no, I really want to opt out of this NIT now. I mean, now it was a little opt out before, but now it's a lot of opt out. I don't want, and so that's what I think will change fairly soon is, and it may be sacrilege to some, but I do think that NCAA tournament is not going to sit on the number 68 for too much longer. And that will, in some ways, affect the NIT as well. I just don't know what you can do to juice it up. It's an afterthought. I mean, the Red Raiders have been a part of it. And there was times when I thought it would be a great situation for Texas Tech to go to the NIT just to keep playing development, to kind of, move up the charts a bit. But you're to the point now where it's NCAA tournament or bust, really.
I mean, it's a bowl game. It's an exhibition bowl game. There is no path to a championship that is relevant, and that's the way you feel about exhibition bowl games. It's so funny how it seems like it resonates and sets in as to what makes the NCAA tournament so exciting, and they want more of it in a basketball sense versus college football. Let's get a bigger tournament. Oh, you're killing the sport. The sky is falling down. It's the total opposite feeling somehow. And maybe that's beginning to change now as we're getting to an expanded playoff from a football standpoint. But the thing that makes everything so exciting, so worthwhile, is a potential path to a championship and one that actually matters, the do-or-die nature of that type of setting. I know a tournament setting in general adds a ton of excitement, as we saw just in a conference tournament type of week a few days ago. But there's no way around the fact that the NIT is an exhibition. And the hardware they hand out at the end of it, while maybe a sense of achievement for the team that gets there, is not the real deal. And by the way, coming out of the shadows to get to the real deal, obviously possible. Florida Atlantic, George Mason, all these, I mean, there's a long list and getting longer, it seems like, of those who have been very, very close within sniffing distance. Butler, once upon a time, of winning a national championship coming out of seemingly nowhere. And that is part of what makes it so great, and I hope is kind of the feeling we're going to get more and more of as it relates to college football's postseason as well. Speaking of college football, before we're out of here, spring camp on and popping, to use an industry term here in the LBK. Chris will have plenty, obviously, on a football front as we roll through this camp and roll through the next few weeks, getting to, I guess, a culmination or a spring game there in later April. We have a few scrimmages as well, but just wanted to get a quick glance in here with you on today's episode at what you think are some of the storylines as we remind ourselves where we left off with Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders and what's coming up here in the fall, but obviously begins here in the spring. So what's on your Red Raider radar? First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and say adios to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset, a 1 seed, or anything in between, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, overs, unders. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets with FanDuel. So what's on your Red Raider radar?
Offensive line. ABC 1, 2, 3, 1A, 1B. I mean, that's really that's really the focus. It's where a lot of your transfer portal pieces were added. And obviously you've had a coaching change there as well. And I think Clay McGuire has really ingrained himself nicely in the time that he's already been on staff. And people forget about, what Clay brings to the table from the standpoint of he is coached not only offensive line, but he's also been a running backs and a tight ends coach before too. So it gives you gives him a bigger, a broader perspective of kind of just offense in general. He's also worked with guys like, I don't know, Jake Spavital, that's pretty good. Lincoln Riley, he's rumored that he's pretty good at coaching offense. That Mike Leach guy is pretty good. And Cliff Kingsbury, pretty good. So he's got, and they all are a bit different, but I think this is good that he can kind of bring a lot of thoughts and ideas and all that. But now he's getting a task or getting a chance to look at the main task for the Red Raiders and like kind of trying to put an offensive line together. And what I'm kind of curious about as we get going, Caleb Rogers is going to be talked about a lot for a lot of reasons. Caleb Rogers talks a lot, and he gets on the mic at the basketball games, or he was, and he's got a towel and a water jug and a fire extinguisher, and he's bouncing around, and he's there's a lot going on there. I think that one of his position switch, I'm going to put question mark by it, because I wonder if it stays that way. But he has been practicing at center a lot. And I'm just not ready to rule out the fact that, when Clay gets in here, does he view it the same way? Does he see, which is not a bad thing to like say, well, guys, I mean, in my experience, or this is what I see, this is how I think that these pieces would work best. I just don't know if we're there yet on anything being in pen.
That's interesting.
Because I think Caleb could actually play guard. I think he could play tackle. We obviously know he could play tackle, but I think he could play guard or he could stay at center. It
almost feels like this is like almost 2 years in the making or something. So I'm a little surprised by that, because it's like this idea has been bounced around for a little while, going back to some bowl practices the last couple of years. We might tinker with him here. And maybe I thought it was a little more set in stone than it sounds like it is.
Yeah, and you just have a new guy, with ideas maybe, Sure. I mean, so we'll see. I mean, because I think Sheridan Wilson could push to play some center. I think Davion Carter, the Memphis kid, is going to be one of your starters, whether it be guard or center. And he's a big-time student of the game, all in, very, very smart. Davion Carter will be one of the best transfer portal guys of this last cycle that anybody that really a lot of people don't talk a lot about.
Mark it down. All right.
Yeah, just because he's an interior offensive lineman, but I think he's like, you can put him in Sharpie as far as one of those three interior spots. As far as, and I've talked about it, and we'll just see kind of how they're going to try a bunch of stuff in the spring. They're going to, tweak it. You're going to see a lot of young guys. There's going to be guys that are working their way back from injury, kind of like a Dalton Merriman type that is kind of working his way back. Nick Fadig has had a shoulder issue, and he's working his way back. And so some of these guys will kind of start practice a bit later than others and all that. But yeah, there's a lot of focus on that position. Who backs up Taj Brooks? How are these new wideouts that you brought in here? I think really good. Is your tight end room, better? Now, Jalen Conyers is not going to go through spring. He's got a minor injury as well. But I think he and Micah Hudson are really on offense, the only two guys that I'm aware of that are going to, and you've got guys like Fadig and Merriman that are coming off of surgery or injuries or whatever that are just now kind of getting back. So we'll kind of monitor that. You got to replace your punter. What does the backup quarterback situation look like behind Baron Morton? I'm fascinated by the Cameron Brown kid that I think is going to be good enough to play something somewhere, maybe non-traditional as a QB, or maybe it will be as a QB in like certain packages. I could keep going, but I know you just asked me in general, so I'm just gonna ramble. But I can keep going.
We got about a minute left, but I've not heard a defensive mention of any kind. Is there anything there that would stand out?
Yeah, I mean, replacing Tony and Jalen, I think that's kind of
that.
Yeah, that's right. That's
the centerpieces in the middle. Yeah,
I think you're. I'm curious about like what your corner spot looks like. I mean, a guy like Mo Horn, who was a spot starter and a top backup for you. You obviously have Braylon Lux. Where do they ultimately land on where AJ McCarty fits in? You've got some portal guys that you've added to the mix there.
And some young guys you're looking to make the next step, right?
Yeah, like a Chapman Lewis, that I think is got a chance that we love.
Mike Dingle.
Yeah, see, and Dingle's, like we forget about how juiced up that linebacker group was last year with him in there, and then he kind of was out. But all these guys, there's just a lot of pieces here, a lot of speed. But I'm mainly looking at that D line group and specifically on the interior. And you've got the Rice transfer, the Nevada transfer that were added into the mix. Who's going to punt for you? Shout out to Weber State because you sent us one that should fill in. But yeah, there's a whole spin the wheel on your storyline or player. I'm fascinated to see Isaac Smith. Keep an eye on Cameron Dickey at running back. We will talk about him as this week or next week rolls along. And we can get more into this offensive line, maybe about kind of some of these pieces you're going to sort through as well. So
cool.
Anyway, it should be a lot of fun. But yeah, again, worlds colliding, man. Football, basketball. Like George Costanza.
Yeah, we're Costanza mode this week for sure.
Right.
And before we're out of here, I'm noticing another mode kicking in. I don't know if this is the beginning of a new apparel era in Chris Level's closet, or if you've taken a job as an Albanian hitman, but I'm noticing 3 stripes on the shoulder from Big Handsome today. Just something else to note on this episode.
3-stripe army, man. Shout out.
Looking good, man. Looking good.
I appreciate the folks that sent me this. I'll just say
there you go.
Yes.
And appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it. And I think we'll be talking to you from Pittsburgh on the next episode, or
that is accurate.
Okay.
Yes, that is accurate. So I'll be
on the scene
in the Berg, right there on the water in downtown PA. And I hear there's a rumor that it's cold, and I'll be looking for Justin Fields or Russell Wilson or the bag of peanuts that either one of those guys were traded for or signed for, because it's Mike Tomlin, they're trying to hunt you down, man. Trying to find out what's going on with the Steelers.
Man, good deal. Well, looking forward to it. Travel safe, and we'll be hoops heavy, I'm sure, on some forthcoming conversations.
You got it, man. Looking forward to it. Fun time of year. Enjoy it, people. Get out of work free notes ready for Thursday and Friday, and be prepared. Start coughing kind of now. Man, I'm just not feeling real good.
There's a tickle.
I
feel back here somewhere.
Feel it coming on. So just, but I'm going to fight through it here today and then maybe tomorrow. But
maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. All right, man. Well, I'll quit rambling. Keep hope alive, everybody. Enjoyed it. Keep your head on a swivel with this portal stuff, man. Stuff could start to shake fairly quickly.
Okay. All right. Good to know. And appreciate you guys being out there. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey. And we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.